So, as I mentioned in my Inside Out review, once I finished reviewing the Terminator movies, I would be reviewing all the Pixar movies that I have not reviewed leading up to the release of The Good Dinosaur in November. And with these reviews, it's important that I review the movies that Pixar made in order. So, like, when I review Toy Story, I'm not just going to jump straight into the sequels. Or when I review Cars, I'm not going to jump straight into Cars 2. Because Pixar has had a very huge impact on my life, and it's important that I review the movies as they were coming out. So let's start off with the original classic that started it all, Toy Story. Toy Story came out in 1995, 20 years ago. Oh man. This is when I'm feeling old, people, when your favorite animated movie of all time becomes 20 years old. So anyway, Toy Story is directed by John Lasseter and focuses on Woody, this cowboy doll whose owner is named Andy. And Woody is Andy's favorite toy. Like, he'll take Woody anywhere he goes. And when Andy leaves the room, Woody and all the other toys in Andy's room come to life. So they do all kinds of stuff that I imagine my Godzilla figures are doing whenever I leave the room. Not just kidding. But basically, they come to life when Andy's gone. And so on this particular day, Andy's birthday party is today. So all of his friends come, give him presents, which puts the toys in a panic because they're always afraid that a new toy is going to come in and replace one of them. But Woody's like, oh no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But then all of a sudden, one of the gifts that Andy gets is Buzz Lightyear, this Space Ranger toy who has wings, glows in the dark, has multiple buttons that have him talk. But the thing is, when Buzz comes to life, he thinks he's an actual Space Ranger. So all the other toys are impressed, but Woody is irritated, and he really gets jealous at Buzz because Andy starts playing with him more than he did with Woody, which, as a kid, we've all been through that, where we get a new toy and we start playing with it a little more than the past toys that we've gotten. So basically, the whole movie is this budding rivalry between Woody and Buzz, which is out of pure jealousy. Not because Woody hates Buzz personally, or Buzz did something to piss off... Okay, he did do something to piss off Woody, but it's just jealousy. Like, there's no huge grudge with one another. Buzz doesn't have a grudge against Woody. It's just jealousy that ultimately ends up being a really great movie. Now, as I mentioned, this movie came out 20 years ago, and this is the first movie that I ever remember seeing in a theater. I was 4 years old when this came out. I remember seeing it at the El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard on the Friday that it was released. And I think with a lot of other people, I was blown away because Disney has had a big part in my life before Toy Story even came out. My dad was a big fan of the older Disney animated movies, so he showed those to me when I was growing up. And I actually have more fond memories of those than I did movies like Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Lion King, and Beauty and the Beast. So when Toy Story came out, everyone was amazed because it was the first feature-length CG animated movie. And like all groundbreaking classics, it tells a really good story at the same time. That's the key thing about a lot of groundbreaking films, is that they don't forget the human element, the story, the characters. Like Jaws, the first summer blockbuster, great story and characters. Star Wars, changed the way movies are made, great story, great characters. And the list could go on. Terminator 2, Jurassic Park. Even back in the days like with Snow White, it was the first feature-length animated film and tell a great story with great characters. Some of the animation doesn't hold up as well, like the humans and the dog Scud look horrifying actually, but you gotta take into account that this was 1995 and computers weren't as powerful as they are today, so the fact that the humans are that way is kind of acceptable, and plus the main focus is on the toys, which when you're animating characters that are basically plastic, you could get away with it. And sometimes metal, because it all looks really good for 1995. All of the characters who are toys are very memorable. Like all the characters in Andy's room, Mr. Potato Head, Slinky, Rex, Ham, Bo Peep. Even the characters that really don't do much, like this little robot, the snake, the shark that lives in Andy's toy chest. And then on the other side, you got the toys in Sid's house, which are these mutated freaks of nature, but they're all memorable. And then I can't forget the little green men in Pizza Planet. Strangers from the outside. Ooh. I just screwed that whole lip thing. Let me try it again. Ooh. Like, those are the original and better Minions. Like, every time I see the little green men, I just love those guys. They are awesome. Again, they don't really do much, but they're so memorable that you just love those guys. But anyway, back to the main two characters, Woody and Buzz Lightyear. Woody is voiced by Tom Hanks, riding off his success of Forrest Gump, and Buzz Lightyear is voiced by Tim Allen. And I honestly can't think of anybody who could have replaced those two voices. Like, those are perfect, and really shows that Pixar, when casting their voice actors for their movies, they know what they're doing. They know how to get the perfect voice. There's really not one character that sounds out of place. It's also a really great script. The concept of toys coming to life when you leave the room is something that is admittedly interesting and goes with the Pixar trend that they would follow of what if so-and-so happened. And the movie's really quotable. It's got a bunch of great lines. And I noticed that a few years ago when I rewatched the first movie again, one of my many reruns of it, I noticed that one of the screenwriters for this movie was Joss Whedon, which I didn't really notice until after I started watching The Avengers, Firefly, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And there's one line in this movie that I swear to God is his, when you think about it. When, before Buzz Lightyear starts to demonstrate to the toys that he can fly, Woody says, "Okay then, Mr. Lightyear, prove it." And I'm like, that's totally a Joss Whedon line right there, because, I mean, think back to the Avengers. No hard feelings, Point Break. Make your move, Reindeer Games, or you might miss a couple things during your time as a capsicle. So I would guarantee you that that line was written by Joss Whedon. And aside from all the memorable and funny lines, this script does a really good job at balancing humor, emotion, drama, and even scares. There are two parts in this movie that do kind of freak you out. It's when you see all of the misfit toys in Sid's room, and when Woody comes to life right in front of Sid and goes, "So play nice." Like, it's like, if a toy actually did that, no matter how innocent it looked, you'd probably run and shit your pants. And speaking of Woody, back to him and Buzz Lightyear, the relationship that these two have are really strong. As I mentioned, the rivalry is all because Woody is jealous that Buzz replaced him as Andy's favorite toy, because they start out in the movie hating each other, but during the events of the movie and during a really kind of heartbreaking realization that Buzz has that he's not a space ranger, the two really start to be close to each other and become really best friends. And that's the whole theme of the movie and the song by Randy Newman, "You Got a Friend in Me," because that song isn't there just to have a song. Those lyrics have depth to the meaning of the movie. And it just, once again, proves my theory that Pixar movies just evolve from being simple kids' movies and actually become real movies. And I'm glad that despite a few slumps, Pixar has kept that tradition. So in the end, Toy Story is the definition of an absolute masterpiece. It's well written, the characters are great, the voice actors do a fantastic job, it's exciting, it's emotional. I don't know how much more I can praise this movie. It, along with the two sequels, are my favorite animated movies of all time. I couldn't pick one. And I can't wait to show these movies to my kids whenever or if I have them, because I always thought to myself that Pixar is like my second parents. They kind of raised me. I learned a lot of life lessons from their movies growing up, and I'm so happy that these movies are fantastic enough for generations to show their kids as time goes on. So if my rating's not clear by now, I'm going to say get off your ass and go see Toy Story right now if you haven't. So that's my review for Toy Story. Leave a comment and tell me what you thought of the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Like, subscribe, share me with your friends. And this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one.